There has never been a better time for us to embrace this practice of friendliness towards ourselves and friendliness towards all other beings. In a world which is becoming more and more divided, there is nothing better that we can do in this day and age than to set an intention in our hearts to bring friendliness towards all those people that we come into connection with. Join me today. Let's look into this practice of friendship a little bit more deeply and understand how, through attachment to our ego, it can make it more and more difficult for us to be friendly to those people around us. Welcome to today's video. This month we've been looking at the concept of Maitri, the practice of friendliness towards ourselves and towards all other beings, because Bhagwan Patanjali in his Yoga Sutras tells us that if we can practice being friendly to ourselves and all those around us, it is a means and a method and a tool for bringing our minds to peace and therefore ourselves to peace. And when I was reflecting today on what I'd like to talk about, a story popped into my mind of a time that I spent in Varanasi in Benares in India a few years ago. So at the time I was in India studying, and I happened to spend a few weeks, beautiful weeks, in Varanasi, which is a very, very ancient holy city on the banks of the river Ganges in India. And whilst I was there, I used to spend the days walking up and down the river, spending time in temples, speaking to people as I moved around the city, practicing yoga, practicing meditation, and really trying to imbibe the atmosphere of spirituality in this beautifully holy place. Now, one day, after having walked around for a period of time, I decided to walk down the steps, the ghats that take you directly onto the level of the river, where I'd been bathing each day. And after having bathed in the river, I was sitting there just watching the water go past, watching the boats go past, just imbibing the atmosphere of this incredible place, when I noticed in front of me, maybe a meter or so ahead of me, that there was an insect. And that insect essentially looked like it was drowning. For some reason, it wasn't able to support its weight of itself in the water. And it looked like it was in some level of distress and it was essentially drowning. Now, at the time, and I laugh only because I was so wrapped up in myself, I was just watching the scene and thinking, oh, how beautiful, look at the water, look at this insect. And at no point did anything enter into my mind to think, oh, hang on, perhaps I should, or I could do something about this. Then the most amazing thing happened. I just had a sense that there was a person descending the ghat, descending the steps coming from my right. It was already quite a long way away. But I just noticed that he came off the path of the river and he started to come down the steps, and I realized that he was heading in my direction. Before I noticed anything more, I suddenly turned around in order to look at this person coming down and towards me. And before I knew it, he had gone right in front of me, had put one foot down into the river, and had somehow graciously picked up the insect in his hand, looked at it for a moment, and blew on it. And in that moment, the insect simply just flew away to freedom, to liberation, to enjoy the rest of its short life. He then turned to me and smiled, held my gaze for a while, and then melted off into the distance. He just walked off, and that was it. That was one of the most transformational experiences of all my time in India. Why? Well, what it showed me was that I was so deeply ingrained in my own thought patterns and in my own head and in my own sort of projection of the fact that I was in this beautiful state and I'd bathed in the Ganges, and here I was just minding my own business, a part of this spiritual scene. Meanwhile, right in front of me, a being was suffering, a being that was only less than a meter away from me, and a being that I could actually have helped had I been in a different frame of mind. And the beauty of what this person did, well, there were a few things. I mean, first of all, the fact that he was so far away, and how he even knew that that insect was there, because he walked with a real purpose towards the river and just picked the insect up like that was exactly what he intended to do since the moment he left the path a few moments ago. But then also the fact that he had had the presence of mind to think, actually, in this moment, I can save this being. And that's what he did. So within a few moments, I went from feeling peaceful and calm and at one with everything to suddenly feeling like a very, very selfish being. And this got me reflecting. This got me thinking more and more about the fact that we are so, as human beings, we are so often totally engrossed in our own narratives. We are so totally engrossed in the machinations and the circumstances of our own lives that we barely have time or the mindset to notice the unfolding of suffering in our midst. Yes, of course, we notice some suffering around us, but just using this example, it just gives us a sense of how many things we are closed down to. And one of the teachings in yoga philosophy is that essentially what we want to rid ourselves of or to loosen is the sense of me and mine and I, the small I. The fact that the world exists, or the perceived fact that the world exists in relation to us. The fact that things around us, or the perceived fact that we need things to be in a certain way in order for us to feel better. And as a result of this, we attach to ideas of what is me and mine so that we can feel some kind of stability in the world. So we say, my house, we say, my car, we say, my clothes. We also say things like, my body. But at the deepest level, yoga challenges us to understand that really nothing is really ours. And there are so many beautiful stories in this tradition that talk to us and explain to us why in reality we are merely guests on this earth. We are merely guests in this world, and the things that we call our own, even if it be a daughter or a son or a wife or a husband or a grandparent or whatever it might be, are actually just temporarily infused with an idea from our minds that those things are actually ours. And we're told that the more that we grasp to ideas of me and mine and I, the more that we actually divide and alienate ourselves from connecting to the unity of being that underpins all existence. So the more that we believe in these ideas of separation, who is family, who is not, who is a friend, who is not only does it separate us, but it also creates barriers in society where we begin to other. When I say other, it's basically to point at another group and say, well, they are different. They are other from the way that we are, and therefore we can treat them differently. One of the most common phrases that we find in society today, and not just that we find, that is actually totally acceptable as a way of saying something, is this: I will do anything for my family. Now, on the surface, that sounds like a beautiful thing to say. Oh, great, here is a man, a father, here is a woman, a mother, who will do anything for their family in order to make sure their family is okay. But what is the other side of that? What that is actually saying is that I value myself and I value my family unit more than anything else. And as a result of that, I will beg, borrow, or steal in order to support my family, at the expense of all of those people that I need to take from in order to support my small family unit. And that is the danger of ego, and that is why yoga philosophy teaches us to let go of those ideas, because ultimately they bring us into conflict with other people. They create a sense of scarcity of resource when we're all trying to hoard and take for ourselves. And they diminish and dilute the ability to be together as a community, to realize that actually sharing and pooling resources is a far more effective way of taking care of each other than selfishly looking out for our own narrow interests. There's a beautiful story that is told by the great teacher Ram Dass in modern times, where he's talking to his father, and his father is a very successful and wealthy businessman. And I believe this was in the late 60s or the early 70s, when Ram Dass was just in the process of publishing his first book called Be Here Now. Now, he intentionally set out with this book not to make money, but to spread the message of yoga philosophy and of what he had learned during the time with his guru in India. But in conversation with his father basically accused him of setting the price for the book at a much too low level, which means that he wouldn't make any money. And Ram Dass' response was this. He said, "Dad, do you remember when Uncle Henry had some legal problems or some legal troubles?" And his dad said, "Yes." And Ram Dass said, "Well, didn't you help him when he had those problems?" And Ram Dass' father said, "Yes." And he said, "Well, If that's the case, how much did you charge him for the legal advice you gave at that time? And his father said, well, don't be ridiculous. Why would I charge Uncle Henry? He's family. And Ram Dass turned with a smile and said, well, you see, that's my predicament. As far as I'm concerned, everyone is Uncle Henry. What he is saying is that he sees the whole world through the diminishment of his own sense of me, mine, and I as being part of his extended family. And therefore, if every being is part of the extended family, we therefore should seek to treat those people like family rather than people to exploit, like friends rather than people that we should get one up on, or people that we should take something from in order that we can better ourselves. And in the society that we live in today, it has been so culturally, economically, and politically conditioned into ourselves, the idea, or into us, the idea that in business, for example, we can do what we want to make a profit at the expense of the environment, at the expense of other people, at the expense of other countries, at the expense of our workers, for example, in those companies. That it literally has become a way of looking at the world, where we literally count ourselves and maybe 2 or 3 people in our family, maybe a few more, and our friends as being the world we care about. And everything outside of that reflects on it, whether we like it or not. We kind of do damage to in subtle and not so subtle ways as a result of that mistaken thinking. And so this comes back again to the practice of Maitri, to the practice of friendliness towards all beings. In order to practice that, what we must do is we must work at diminishing asmita, or ego, which is the mistaken belief of me and mine and I being something that is limited. Number one, we're told really there's no such thing, because even this body, we are just guests in this body for the period of time that it is animated, and when consciousness leaves, we will leave the guest house of the body. And similarly, all of the so-called possessions that come into our hands throughout our lives, again, can we really say that they are ours? They are just passing through. And so if we can diminish the sense of me and mine and I, if we can expand the circle of accepting that everyone on this planet is part of an extended family, and we can let go of the idea of doing whatever we need to do to support ourselves at the expense of others, if we can let that go, then we truly start to let go of ego. Then we truly start to practice friendliness towards ourselves and friendliness towards all beings. Because as we are often told, particularly in Buddhist teachings, if one person in the world is suffering, then the ripple is felt on all people of the world. And therefore coming together, reducing the barriers, taking down the things that make us feel that different groups of people are somehow other. If we can do all that, we can move into our heart space, we can open ourselves to the world, and we can truly and meaningfully and authentically practice friendliness, bringing the minds of all beings to peace. So as always, please do reflect on this talk, reflect on the stories that have been shared, and hopefully you'll see that this is a pathway to peace that we can practice in our day-to-day lives. So as always, thank you for joining. I hope that you are finding these videos useful, and I look forward to seeing you again very soon. Namaste.